Okay, so we're going to do an IELTS Task 1, where we're analysing figures without the flow of time, and today we're looking at pie charts. Okay, so let's look at the topic. The charts below show the percentage of water used for different purposes in 6 areas of the world. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Okay, you should write at least 150 words. So this is something that a lot of students forget to do when they're writing their Task 1 IELTS, is to make comparisons, show off your comparative language. However, in contrast to, is bigger than, less than, increases more slowly than. Okay, so try and find stuff that you can compare. So the first thing you should do when you look at your IELTS Task 1 is take time to look at the graph or look at the figures or look at the images you've been given, okay? And take some time to sort of sit and think and plan what you're going to do. So we've got water use in different purposes, 6 areas of the world. So if you look at these areas, you've got North America, South America, Europe, Africa, Central Asia, and Southeast Asia, okay? I was going to say they're almost the continents. We're just missing... if this wasn't split into Central and Southeast Asia, we could have said the six continents, which is a bit annoying. So that makes this a bit harder to paraphrase. Okay, so if we're looking at water use, the first thing I see is that we've got South America, and these guys down here have all got this huge use of agricultural water. Okay, so they all have number 1 is agriculture. Okay, and then that instantly I'm thinking, okay, well, we're going to compare that to North America and Europe, okay, where their number 1 use of water is industry. Okay, so I'm thinking that's my first comparison. So I'm thinking, what am I going to talk about in my overview? Okay, well, that's going to be comparison number 1. Okay, main use of water. That's the biggest difference between these areas of the world. Okay, and then they've got, both North America have got, the next biggest is agriculture, and then the smallest is domestic. So it goes 1, 2, 3. And that's the same for Europe, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I'd be quite happy putting North America and Europe together as one. Okay, so my detail 1 paragraph is probably going to be North America plus Europe and talk about how they're the same. Okay, and then we're going to compare that in my second detail paragraph. So if I'm looking at the other areas, let's take a look and see if they're all entirely the same. So for South America, the next biggest one is domestic. The next biggest one is domestic. Next biggest one is domestic. Okay, so Southeast Asia is a little bit different in that next is industry. Okay, so that should be a 2. The second use. Okay, and then smallest for them is domestic. Okay, and that's the opposite to the other countries. Okay, so then I'm going to be comparing the other 4 countries together. Okay, so then there's a comparison within the paragraph where I'm saying all the countries have got the biggest use of water for agricultural use, and then 3 countries, the next biggest use is domestic, apart from Southeast Asia, where the next biggest use is industrial. Okay, so then by looking at it and taking some time and looking through the data, I've kind of already figured out what I'm going to talk about. Okay, and so in my overview, the first thing I'm going to talk about is differences over agriculture versus industry. Okay, because that's the biggest difference, the biggest comparison we can see in this data. Okay, and then we can then talk about how usually the smallest amount of water is used for domestic use is usually number 2. So maybe I'd then talk about like domestic, except in developed countries. So you could say domestic water use. Okay, so just by taking some time and looking through and marking it up, it can sort of help plan ahead what you're going to write and how you're going to write it. So let's take a look and see what this candidate has done. So the given pie charts illustrate information about the proportion of water usage for different purposes in 6 areas of the world. Okay, overall, the amount of water for agriculture use is the greatest except for North America and Europe, except for in North America and Europe, where water is mainly consumed in industry. So industries doesn't need a capital letter here. Okay, we would just say plural in industry. Okay, singular rather, we don't need to have it as plural. Okay, so they do have an overview. So they've got their overview here. Okay, and they've got their paraphrase intro sentence. Okay, so the overview, I think, could be extended a little bit and give me a little bit more information. In here, I think it's a little bit short for an overview. Okay, so we've got detail 1. In detail, the percentage of water for agriculture use in Central Asia is the biggest at 88%, which is followed by that of Africa with 84%, while the figure for water used for industrial purpose accounts for 5%, which is the lowest throughout the data. Okay, but is that this figure for water use of 5%, is that for Africa or is that for Asia? Okay, I'm not sure because it's the same sentence. Okay, so I'm not very sure about that. And I don't know if I think you should be mixing agriculture with industry. I think those should be 2 separate sentences rather than combined into one, because that can make it more confusing to read. North America and Europe, in the meantime, consume around half of water for industry with 53% and 48% respectively. So again, I'm confused. So again, we're focusing on industry here. So why have we got agriculture? So I would split this into agriculture, okay, in one sentence or one paragraph, and then I would focus on water use for industry in another one. Okay, detail 2. In regard to domestic use, there is no more than 20% in all areas, and 19% of South America is the greatest what? The greatest amount of water used for domestic use. In Central and Southeast Asia, however, only 7% of water is used for home use, which is the smallest proportion in those areas. The figures stand at 13%, 15%, and 9% in North America, Europe, and Africa in order. Okay. And then my thing is this, but what? It's kind of a little bit unfinished. I think might have run out of time. So I think there's quite a lot that you can talk about here. I do like how they've been listing out the percentages and picking out trends, and this is the most, and this is the least, and this is compared to that. So I do appreciate that. It's a little bit short, and I feel like this candidate ran out of time when they were writing. So task achievement, they did sort of attempt to answer the task, not in full enough detail for me, so it's probably going to be a 5.5. Coherence and cohesion is probably going to be stuck at a 5 because it felt quite listy. It was a little bit difficult to like I said, they were mixing up, talking about industry and agriculture in different points in one paragraph. Vocabulary was kind of adequate for the task. I didn't think there was anything particularly wrong, but also not anything particularly great about the vocabulary. And the grammar was okay. There weren't a huge amount of grammar errors. It was pretty consistent. So grammar probably coming out at a 5.5. So I think overall probably coming out at a 5.0. I could see the task achievement being pulled down to a 5, maybe. I mean, I know that in reality they would round this up to a 5.5. I just think overall it has a 5.0 feel to me, and it just needs to be longer, a bit more detailed, and a bit less confusing inside of the paragraphs. So I think this would probably for me come down to a 5. More than a 5.5, but the candidates made a good start. The grammar was quite consistent, so I think they've definitely got potential to improve.